Before we start this video, a large thank you to a person with a very strong opinion on Linux. Thank you for the support, my friend. You are greatly appreciated. A name I unfortunately cannot pronounce. Thank you very much for the support, my friend. It is greatly appreciated. And Martin for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And as always, a massive thank you to Halo Burner and Ryan Bellin for their massive support this month at channel on Patreon. It is greatly appreciated, gentlemen, and I hope you enjoy the video. Good morning, good day, good afternoon. So we didn't really actually end the poison effect last time, or at least I forgot to. So real quick before we start, just go to poison effect, call your override remove effect, and just call character.ispoisoned.values equal to false. This makes it so when the timer runs out, you'll actually stop the poison flag. You also want to check for if is owner here if you're doing server RPCs to play these effects on both ends. So I'm just going to insert that here right now real quick. So we're just going to say if character.is not owner, simply return. I don't like this new Visual Studio autofill. There we go. Okay guys, let us go to the player UI manager, and we're going to start out by duplicating our build-up bar. So I'm just going to do this in whatever order I think about doing it, but we're going to copy a lot of the steps from the previous build-ups. So I'm going to call this bleed instead of poison, and I'm going to assign it the color red and make sure the build-up type is set to bleed. Also make sure your alpha here isn't on 0. It's kind of mess you up. Looks like you put in the color red, but really there's nothing there. And I'm going to go to the slider here, and I see that it's still green, so I'm also going to change the fill here like so. Copy this, and then I can paste it. And you can make a thing on the World Utility Manager if you prefer for the color bleed or whatever. And I'm going to save this. Okay, so I'm going to go into take buildup effect. We're going to see where we are at. So we have check for poison status and we have check for bleed status, but I believe, yes, bleed is empty. So let's just copy wholesale everything we did for poison, and we'll just remove what we don't need and modify what we need to modify. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it. Now we don't need to check if the player is a certain flag, because you can get bled over and over again. This is not a timed effect, it's instant. So we do need to check if we have buildup though. That is important. So if the player has a buildup effect already, then we're going to basically just modify that. Otherwise we're going to instantiate a new one. So I'm going to call this bleed buildup, and it doesn't exist right now, so it's going to complain and give us an error because this is not real. But we're going to use this not real variable for now until we actually go and place it afterwards. So basically replace degrade poison buildup effect with this degrade bleed buildup effect. Now down here, instead of comparing the poison buildup to the max capacity, we're going to compare the bleed buildup to the max capacity. And we're going to change poison buildup to bleed buildup to 0 if we go over the max capacity. Now there are two ways to do this next part, because this next part is going to determine how you instantiate the effect. You could just make a flag that it's only ever going to be true for a single frame, is bleeding, and then when it flicks to true, we call onValueChanged, which instantiates the particle effects and sound effects whenever you want. This is probably the easiest way to do it, and is more in line with what we're doing right now, so we're probably going to do that. Method 2 is to call a server RPC from this character and just instantiate the effects that way. So since this kind of goes more in line with our naming conventions and our setup, we're just going to make a flag for he's bleeding. Now, option 3, which is what I do, which isn't necessary in a project like this, as far as I can think of right now anyway, for any effect that comes to mind, you could make effects actually play on both ends using RPCs. So every time an effect gets processed on one end, that owner sends an RPC and processes the effect for his character and every other client. But then you have to go through all these effects and check for is owner for changing his network variables. Like I said, not really necessary, but then you could do that and play the effects straight from the effect right here. But for the easiest, most simple and straightforward method, we're going to use number 1. Number 2 is also pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to put it here. Number 2, use a server RPC, and then you could, I'm going to call an imaginary server RPC name by saying character.character.network.manager bleed character server RPC. And this isn't real, obviously, so it's going to throw me an error, but you get the idea. Both will work out just fine. So I'm going to comment this out. Now, is bleeding doesn't exist either, so it's going to get mad and throw me an error. So we're going to come in here and we're going to change poison effect to bleed effect, which also does not exist. So Visual Studio is going to be really mad at me today. And now we're going to change the name poison to bleed. And I actually want to call that blood loss effect, not bleed. I think blood loss is a better name. So we'll change this to blood loss, and we're going to search the world character effects manager for a blood loss effect that also does not exist. All right, and then instead of adding a timed effect, we add an instant effect. I believe I call it process instant effect. Might want to change that later. All right, well, that is basically everything we need to do here. So let's comment this out right now, and we can actually go and make this flag right away so Visual Studio stops complaining. So let's go do that. Let's jump over to the character network manager, and let's make a flag for is bleeding. So again, this is gonna trip true for like a single frame, and then if you're the owner, you're gonna trip it back to false. And if you're not the owner, you're gonna play some blood loss effects. You're gonna play blood loss effects either way if you are or are not the owner. So, all right, now we are going to come down here, and what you want to do is copy on is poison changed, and we're gonna call it on is bleeding changed. And this one's going to be pretty straightforward too, because you're not checking for an effect that already exists on your character. This is going to be a quick pop, just a burst of blood. So you just need to instantiate something basically. So we don't need this entire else statement can be deleted, and we don't need to check if the effect is already present, because there is no effect to check. It's just going to be a one-time thing. So we can say blood loss VFX is equal to, and we're going to name an imaginary variable that doesn't exist, called blood loss effects on the character effects manager, and we're going to get rid of this check, and I'm going to keep on the lock transform because that makes the most sense to me. You could optionally get fancy and put it on wherever the last attack struck you. So we can say world character effects manager here, or go to that rather, and let's copy the poison VFX and let's rename this to blood loss VFX. There we go. Let's go back here, and this should not be giving me grief, but oh no, that's good. It just took a second to change. All right, let's copy on is bleeding changed, and we can actually call that on the player manager and subscribe and unsubscribe to the event. Actually, let's go to the AI manager first. Someone asked me, a couple people actually, why don't you put it on the base class? And that's entirely fine. And the honest answer is I put this on both the AI character and the player on separate classes, because on Nephilim, I have a weird hybrid AI/world object thing that I don't want to call some flags on. So I've gotten used to calling them on separate managers like that, just in case I don't want one to inherit everything from the base class. So I say all this to say, you don't need to put it on separate classes. You can put it on both classes if it's shared. This is just a habit that I have gotten into that I kind of unconsciously carried over to this project. So let's put this call here on both the player and the AI, or the base class. We're going to say is bleeding.onValueChanged is equal to on is bleeding changed. Make sure you unsubscribe from that over here to on network despawn. All right, looks good. Let's save that. Now I'm going to go over to the world character effects manager. I'm going to copy my degrade poison buildup effect. I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to change it to degrade bleed buildup effect. And don't forget, when you make new effects, to add them to your world character effect manager's list, the proper list. I'm going to drag in my critical blood splat damage here. I'm just going to change around these settings real quick and the max particle count, and I'll be right back. I won't actually show this on video because I might take a moment just to see. So just play around with this and get something you like. Okay, I'm back. Now I have this effect, and I'm going to drag it into, I'm going to make prefab first. I didn't make a prefab. Make a prefab of your effect, and then drag it into your world character effects manager. So all I did was crank up the blood loss even more. The critical damage effect we made ages ago. I think I made it like times 2 or 3 more dense. So I'm going to go here and search, and there we go. Got that. Now I'm going to copy my degrade poison build effect, and I'm just going to change it to bleed in name and in buildup type on the variable. And then I'm going to add it to my timed effects list, so it generates an ID, and I'm going to add it to that variable. We need to generate an ID because we need to check by the ID if the effect is already present on the character. That's very important. So let's drag that in there like so, and then add it to our timed effects list down here. Okay, so far so good. Now let's go over to, where am I going? Scripts, and let's go to effects. Where is it? Okay, there it is. And static. Sorry, not static, instant. Go back. And now let's make a new script for bleeding, or blood loss. So model behavior, and let's call this blood loss effect. So this is going to be very simple as well. All we're doing here is really applying some damage and checking to see if the character dies, and then we're playing a death animation if we need to. So there is a simple formula we're going to use. We're going to make this derive first from instant character effect, and we're going to override the process effect, and we're going to make some variables here and kind of map out what we're going to do. So what do we need? Well, in Elden Ring and Dark Souls, blood loss depends on your character's max health. So we do a percentage of that max health depending on how much you actually have. So we're going to do the same thing here. Percentage of max HP damage. So we're going to use 15. It's a pretty big number. But basically 15% of the totality of the health of a creature is going to be subtracted in a hit. So if you have 1,000 total health, then every time you get bled, you're going to lose 150. I think Elden Ring and Dark Souls also do a small like plus 100 or plus 50 or something to that damage as well, so we'll do that as well. Private calculate damage. This is going to be how we're going to determine the damage, and we're going to make this require a character manager variable. We're going to call that character, and we're going to just, let's make a local variable here actually for that damage. So up here, I'm just going to say private float damage is equal to 0, and then we'll change that damage right here and then apply it. So we're going to say damage is equal to character.character. I'm just realizing I didn't need to make that a local variable up there. We could have just did it in this one function. I'm just looking at my notes from Nef, but that's okay. It's there now. Damage is equal to character.character network manager.max health.value times, we do brackets, the percentage of max health damage dealt divided by 100. And then for some reason your damage is less than 0, we'll just say damage is equal to 1. And let's also do a damage plus equals, and we can just add a flat number to that. You can make a variable for this flat number if you want. I'm just going to say 100, but you definitely should make a variable, no magic numbers. So I'm going to say character network manager dot current health dot value is equal to character network manager dot current health dot value minus our damage. mathf.round to int. Why did you autofill me using system up there? Now I can't use mathf round to int. Whoops. All right, erase that. Yeah, the new autofill feature adds namespaces for you when you type something, and more often than not, it adds the wrong one for me. I don't know if you guys have that problem in Visual Studios. I'm not a fan. Or you could say alternatively minus equals damage, which is what I'm going to do instead of typing it out so long-windedly. All right. That looks good. Now I'm going to add a private void for check for death. And we're going to make this require a character manager. Now, why do we just check? What are we checking? Well, if you're going to do server RPCs, check for the owner. If you're not, return. If you're not dead, return. But most importantly, if you're in some instance where you should not break the animation state, in our game, the only instance of that right now is being critically damaged, and then simply return. This could be a boss grab attack or like a parry or a backstab. Then that's going to handle the death transition. Then we're going to say character animate manager play target action animation dead _01 true, and we are good. Let's just do the owner check. I know we don't have this as a server RPC here, but just in case, I'm just going to put it here. If you ever want to add it and you forget about this, then cool. All right, so under process effect, we're going to say calculate damage, and then we're going to say check for death. And that is it for that effect. So let's copy and yoink the create asset menu from our poison effect, and let's change timed effects to instant effects, and let's change poison effect to bleed or blood loss effect, whatever you prefer. I think I called it hemorrhage on Nephilim. All right, I keep hitting the print screen button on accident when I go to pause. Let's go to character effects, instant effects, and create the blood loss effect under instant effects. So don't forget to add this both to the list of instant effects on your World Character Effects Manager so it generates an ID, but also let's add it to that. Did I not make the local variable, or did I not uncomment it out? I didn't make it, did I? No, I don't think I did. Let's go to the World Character Effects Manager. Actually, let's go to take buildup first and uncomment this. So let's uncomment the blood loss effect, and let's change this to a lowercase b. And let's go over to the World Character Effects Manager. Let's make a variable now for that blood loss effect. Public poison effect, blood loss effect. And I am going to say blood loss effect. There we go. Save that. I keep hitting print screen. Whoops. All right, that's good. All right, so let's go back into the project, and I'm going to go over to the player network manager because we're not quite done yet. We're almost there though. And now under is poison changed, I'm going to override on is bleeding changed. And to those of you asking, why don't I just say base dot and use the logic? I don't know if it's been fixed, but there was an issue on the newer version of netcode where calling base dot function would sometimes be erroneous. So it would lead to a stack overflow when it didn't in early versions of it. And I don't know if that's intended or broken, but I've just been not doing that since. It can be fixed by now. I'm sure it is if it was an issue. And if it's intended, well, I'm sure there's a reason for it. But nonetheless, that's why I have not been calling base. I've been overriding it completely and copying the logic that I need. I don't like doing that, but it is what it is. I could do a test right now. Maybe we'll after this video. So we're going to say the regular logic here instead of stating the effect. And then we're going to say if you're the owner, we want to send a status pop-up for blood loss, which is bleed. And also we want to instantly change this flag back to false. So nothing is happening here on the flag when it gets changed back to false, which is fine. So it's not going to endlessly cycle some random series of events. And now we can save that. Okay, let's go back into the project again. I'm going to make sure I got my blood loss effect in here in the variable. And then I'm going to go down here and search up my buildup effect. Just make sure I'm calling that. Yes, we're degrading it. Fine. Okay. And now I'm going to go over to my player network manager. I'm actually looking for I'm calling the degradation of the buildups because I know we're missing a part here. Okay, I think it's on the HUD manager. I remember now. Let's go and copy the buildup bar and paste it, the poison buildup bar that is, the variable for it, and make one for bleed. And let's right click on poison buildup bar and find. Now we're not using set buildup amount because we went with the set new poison buildup amount. So make a function for set new bleed buildup amount, which is just copy the poison, replace poison with bleed. And then we're going to call this when our bleed buildup changes our network variables. So we're going to use on value changed. You can just copy the poison here if you find all references on the player manager. And we can say player network manager bleed buildup dot on value changed plus equals player UI manager dot instance dot player UI HUD manager set new bleed buildup amount. Now make sure you're running this in if is owner. Otherwise, if you have a friend in the game and they take bleed, you're going to have your HUD updated for their bleed or blood loss amount. You don't want that. So unsubscribe and on network despawn, and I think we're good. I'm going to save that. Now I'm going to go into the HUD and I'm going to drag in my variable for the new bleed up bar we just made, or made earlier in the video, but just created a variable for. And now under set max buildup value, I'm going to say bleed buildup bar dot set max stat buildup capacity. Remember, this is called when we calculate our max buildup. It's based on our vitality level. So in game now, we should be good. Let's go to my player. I'm going to go down to the debug player effects, and we're going to click apply bleed buildup, and it is not degrading. Okay, so character stats manager. Here's what I forgot. Right down the bottom, degrade buildups, we have bleed. I did not actually write the logic in for it because I said I'll come back when we do the bleed video. So do the same thing as poison, copy and paste it, change the keyword poison to bleed, and you are pretty much good to go. So poison buildup becomes bleed buildup. Now if I save and I go back in the game, now we should be good for real. So back in here, apply bleed buildup, and it degrades. Good stuff. Apply it again. Cool. And one more time. There we go. Cool. Pop up, blood loss effect. Very good. And it did a lot of damage. So now let's do it again. Make sure the death sequence plays correctly. Bleed buildup, and again, and boom. Excellent. All right, there you go, guys. Now you have a way to inflict blood loss in your project, another status effect. It's up to you guys entirely. I can go ahead and cover like frostbite, but the frostbite in Elden Ring is different than the one in my game. And someone mentioned they wanted me to cover stopping a character's motion. In Elden Ring, I think you just get a stamina reduction and a big chunk of damage. Point is, I can cover more status effects if you guys want, or I can move on to something else. Just let me know what you'd want to see next in the comments, and I will be more than happy to cover it. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys learned something, and I hope you have a very lovely weekend. A special thank you to my patrons and the people who like and comment on these videos. It is genuinely because of all of you this series is alive and well, so you have my sincerest gratitude. A special thank you also to those who share the series via word of mouth. Okay, that's it for me, guys. Have a good weekend. See you later.